The hero of our story is Aron Ralston, an ordinary guy who liked to spend his time outdoors, hike and climb rocks. But one day, his life changed dramatically. One wrong move during a rock climbing session, and he found himself trapped in a Utah canyon with a boulder weighing several tons pressing down on his right hand. It was then that Aron understood he wouldn't be saved. No one knew about his climbing trip, and even if someone did, this place was so remote that rescuers would never find him in time. 5 days passed. Aron didn't have any food or water, and the pain from the injury was excruciating. He tried to free his hand, but it was no use. Then he had only one idea left, which seemed crazy, desperate, and even insane: cut off his own arm. Let's see whether Aron managed to save himself and what price he paid for it. We all want to achieve great things in life: travel more, learn something new, or start a successful business. However, we often don't know where to start and how to make our dreams come true. You might think you need a lot of money, connections, or luck. But actually, all you need is a good plan. Aron set out to explore the remote and practically uncharted terrain of Utah's Blue John Canyon. A few days before, the young man had already been there, but he had been able to get to the bottom of the canyon because of high water levels. This time, he hoped to finally get to the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. Aron was an experienced climber, so he didn't really take anything with him for protection. Later, this would become one of the reasons why he found himself in such a hopeless situation. On the first day of his hike, Aron discovered a cave which he decided to explore. Unfortunately, the man didn't realize that the rocks above him were loose, and when he tried to move further into the cave, the rocks fell, and one of them hit his right hand, pinning it against the wall. It was a huge boulder weighing several tons. It was at that moment that Aron realized that he was in big trouble. The man tried to move the boulder somehow and free his hand, but it was no use. Moreover, the injured limb began to hurt more and more. Soon, the pain became unbearable, and there was nothing he could do. He could uncall for help since he left his phone in the car, and there was no one around. So he started screaming at the top of his lungs, hoping to attract the attention of at least some passers-by, but unfortunately, no one answered. In the end, Aron calmed down and realized that he needed to act quickly. If he wanted to survive, he had to come up with a plan. The young man used his mobile phone to call his family and friends and leave voice messages saying goodbye. Then he started writing notes to his loved ones. He wrote about how much he loved them and asked for forgiveness for not saying goodbye. Then he tried to free his hand again, but when he realized it was useless, he decided to wait for rescuers. Aron tried not to think about the worst-case scenario. However, after a while, he understood that no one was coming. No one knew where he was. The man decided to take matters into his own hands. The first 3 days, Aron drank water from the natural sources in the canyon. However, then it ran out completely. He also ate the little food he had with him, including some candy bars and nuts. When everything ran out, he started chewing on his own toenails. Hunger and thirst tormented him, but they weren't the worst things he had to deal with. The main thing was the pain from the injury. Every day, it got worse and worse. The wound turned black, and the finger began to rot. It was too painful even to move. So Aron took painkillers, drank water with salt, and waited. But time passed, and still no one came. There was no one to rescue him. It was then that he made the decision to cut off his own arm. Of course, it sounds scary and even insane, but in fact, it was the only way to save himself. The man carefully examined his pocket knife. This tool was designed to cut through rock, but now it would have a different purpose. The upcoming operation was impossible without anesthesia. Therefore, Aron took some painkillers and drank as much water as he could. The next step was to disinfect the wound and prepare his arm for surgery. After that, he tied a bandage around his hand, pulled it tight, and waited a bit. Now he had to find a suitable place for the operation. Of course, it was necessary to choose a place away from the boulder in case something went wrong. He crawled to a small ledge nearby, lay down, and took a deep breath. At that moment, he closed his eyes and thought about his life, his loved ones, and his future. When he opened his eyes again, he looked at the knife in his hands and the operating area in front of him. Taking a deep breath again, he plunged the blade into his arm. It's hard to imagine what kind of pain he must have felt at that moment. The man screamed loudly, but no one answered. In the end, he calmed down and continued the operation. It was necessary to make cuts not only in the skin, but also in the muscles, tendons, and bones. Aron had never done anything like this before, but his will to live helped him. After some time, the man managed to free his arm and saw blood trickling down the canyon wall. It meant that the most difficult part was behind him. Oh, he had to crawl out of there. When the sun rose the next morning, Aron made his way out of the canyon. Seeing the bloody arm on the ledge, he understood that he had to hide it somehow. Otherwise, anyone who finds it may think that it belongs to some wild animal. So he put his backpack on his injured arm and dragged it to the car. But the most important thing was that he was seen. Some tourists noticed that and called the police. The man was taken to the hospital. His hand was amputated in the emergency room and he received a blood transfusion. But despite the difficult operation, his life was saved. Later, Aron said that he didn't feel any pain in his arm anymore. It was as if it didn't exist. When the doctors bandaged his shoulder, they found his backpack with his bloody arm inside. Later, he asked them to return it to him. It was the only reminder of the incredible ordeal he went through. Having survived such trauma, Aron could hardly have imagined what would happen next. Journalists from all over the world wrote about his feat, and in 2010, a film called 127 Hours was released based on his story. Danny Boyle became the director, and James Franco played the main role. This movie was nominated for many prestigious awards and won quite a few of them. There are many people in the world who doubt that they can do something extraordinary. They say that they can't do anything special and are just ordinary people. However, Aron Ralston's story proves that even the most ordinary person can accomplish something extraordinary if necessary. Now the man continues to travel, climb rocks, and go on hikes. He also often visits schools and talks to children, telling them his amazing story. Looking at his pictures, you can't even tell that he once lost his arm. Life goes on. And as for the boulder that once trapped Aron, it's still in its place. Only a small mark remained of the rock where he cut off his hand. People come to this place to pay tribute to the man who showed incredible courage and willpower. Friends, did you like this emotive story? Write your thoughts in the comments. And that's probably enough for today. See you soon.